I'm Pam, and I would like to welcome you to the Live Authentically show. My team and I help other people step into their authentic realities via a number of different modalities. This show is obviously one of them. We also have a Facebook group of like minded people committed to spiritual growth and transformation, and we would love to have you join us. You can find us at liveauthentically.today/FB. Also, super pumped that last year I launched my debut book. It's called SOAR, SOAR, and it's on Amazon. And it shows you how I partnered with the universe to create my new reality. I am super excited that today with me I have Sam Liebowitz. Hey, Sam.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on your show, Pamela. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited to hear about you and everything that you do in the world. But before we launch into that, I always start my shows off with the same question. And that question is, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. So, how do you live authentically every day?
Hmm. This is the kind of question that I usually don't think much about because I'm just one of those people. I am who I am. And it doesn't matter what situation I'm in, doesn't matter whether I'm at work, at home, with friends. Mm, Anybody who knows me knows, like, oh, yeah, that's Sam, because it's just the way I am.
Love
It's
it.
nothing I have to effort at. It's just I've always been me.
I love it. Have you ever encountered any barriers that have gotten in the way? I mean, it sounds like you are completely comfortable in your authenticity, but have you ever stumbled upon anything, any fears or doubts or anything that seemed like it was getting in the way?
Well, like most people, yeah, as a kid, I was bullied. Was picked on, and I always had, I was always, as most people, I always felt like an outsider.
Mhm.
So that would be the only thing, and that kind of dampens your light a little bit when that happens. It kind of makes you contract. But as an adult, other than, like, sometimes people not living up to their word or finding out that somebody you trusted really wasn't trustworthy. I mean, things like that. I don't know that I necessarily ever took it as a reflection upon myself, but I just, there was always this feeling inside of me that I knew the world could be better, that it didn't have to be like that.
Mhm.
So I just always seek to, what can I do to make things better, and not really take it as a judgment on myself. But of course, like anybody, I have things about myself that I don't feel so good about. I don't exercise as much as I should. I have my own character flaws, shall we say?
And we all do, those opportunities for growth and transformation. And I think that's the beautiful thing about this spiritual journey is when we go deeper and we investigate those and figure out how do we move out of those places where we're contracting and move into the place of
Right.
expansion. But I do want to go back to something that you mentioned. You mentioned bullied and kind of being picked on, and for you, it sounds like you were sort of able to take that in stride, and that didn't necessarily put anything, any dents in your armor or anything. But I think for some people, experiences like that can be damaging and can have long lasting effects. So let's
Well,
talk about that. What do you think? I mean, first of all,
Well,
'cause I
let
think,
me just say, it did put many chinks in my armor. Okay,
okay,
I am a human being, and it did affect me. But I've been on this path, and I've been doing so much work on myself for the last 12, 13, 14, 15 years, that I've just had the experience and come to accept that even those chinks in my armor are perfect and beautiful and
mhm,
are a gift. And even though they make me feel uncomfortable sometimes, but they're definitely still there. I just don't judge them anymore.
mhm. I love that. So, what words of wisdom would you have for people who are in situations like that, either as children or as adults, to not allow others' words or actions to damage their self worth or their self value?
Well, the first thing is, when somebody says or does something and it doesn't make us feel good, men especially love to avoid that feeling, and we kind of cut ourselves off from it, and that's a big mistake. We do have to feel our feelings. Women are much better at, like, feeling it, though sometimes we can get too much into the feeling. um
Mhm,
and so my advice would be, it's like, feel what you feel in the moment, but don't judge yourself or others for it. And look for how is in the broader sense, and in the moment we usually can't, but in the broader sense, how ultimately might this serve you? I'm a
Mhm.
big believer that life happens for us, not to us. Big hats off to my dear friend Jennifer Huff for coming up with that phrase, um, or at least she was the first one I heard say it. Um, but I'm a big believer that life does happen for us, and it's just that in a given moment we may not see it, and our minds are so good at judging things and saying how, oh no, this is wrong, this is bad because it's not what we want, but it's not what we want because we have such a limited perspective. And if we could pull back and view things from the 50,000 foot level and see things on a real soul level or spirit level, we agreed to come here and be a part of this. We may not have expected what's happened, and that's kind of what makes the journey kind of fun and interesting, because if we knew everything that was going to happen, we might, it'd be kind of boring. But
Right.
so it's just, and look, I just also want to be very clear. If someone's being abused, if somebody's doing something that's just not right, get yourself out of that situation. Okay. I'm not saying that like it's right for someone to abuse anyone in any way, shape, or form, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, whatever. But just being a bit uncomfortable, or somebody saying something that hurts us a little bit, well, is to feel it, take a big breath, maybe two or three or four or five, take a step back and say, okay, I've experienced this. How
Mhm.
does this serve me? And you may not get the answer right away, but just by asking the question, we lean in that direction, and then ultimately we will get that answer, though it may not come for a while sometimes.
Right. Yeah. Such a beautiful answer. And I'd love to echo too. I love that phrase, life happens for us, not to us. Right. That's that,
Yes.
it's moving out of that victim mentality into the hero mentality. One of my favorite Buddhist phrases is pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Mhm.
Same idea that we all experience pain, many types of pain, emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, whatever it is. But we have a choice. We don't have to stay in that place of pain. We have a choice and we can move out of those modes of contraction. Those are the places that keep us stuck, right? Into
Mhm.
the energies of expansion. So let's go there next. What are some of the more expansive energies that people can strive to embody?
So I would like to make a little tweak on what you just said, though, which is to take it even to a higher level or deeper level, which is not only is suffering optional, but it's all here to serve us. So even the pain itself serves us.
Hmm.
And if you think about it, pain is very essential and very important in our lives, because, like, if we're little kids and we put our hand on a hot stove, what do we naturally do?
Pull our hand away.
Right. We pull a hand away. Ouch, it hurts. There's pain there. If
Mhm.
we didn't feel pain, we'd leave the hand there. And if we left the hand there, what would happen over time? It would burn to a crisp and turn into ashes. So
Right.
that pain is actually very necessary. It's important information that's guiding us. So for me, the challenge always is, and the trick is to stop judging the pain, stop judging the uncomfortable feelings, stop
Mhm.
judging the situations that in the moment are not what we quote unquote think we want. And if we can learn to
Yeah.
just in the moment stop judging it as good or bad, like, don't make it a good thing, don't make it a bad thing, it's just a thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then we can actually glide through life and dance through life in a much easier, with more fluid, more flow, and even more energy. Judging things takes so much mental, emotional, spiritual energy, and it really doesn't serve us. But to come from a place of knowing that we are creators, that we agreed to be here, that the universe thinks we were a really good idea, because let's face it, how many gazillion different chemical reactions had to come together for life to happen, for things to develop, for our ancestors to still be alive, for us to be born? We often don't think about what did it take for us to actually be here today? It
Right.
took such an enormous amount of equations. The largest supercute computers in the world, all working together, couldn't have calculated that out.
Right.
So the universe must think we're a pretty good idea, and that it's a pretty good idea that we are where we are right now.
Right. Absolutely. So what do you think? What is the purpose of life here on Earth?
Hmm. I heard someone once say, and I love this phrase, that the let me see for a minute, that the meaning of life is to discover our gifts, and our purpose is to give it away.
Yeah, I've heard that before. That's beautiful.
And but I often, and look, I've gotten into that mindset myself in the past, that sometimes I think we get too stuck up on, like, oh, what's my purpose in life? What's my meaning in life?
Hmm.
Why can't it just be you? To just enjoy life, to just live and grow, lean into those things that light us up and make us feel good. Why does it have to be anything more than that? I mean, as human beings, we love to overcomplicate things so much. And I believe in simplifying things as much as possible. And you know what? Who cares why we're here? Let's, if we're enjoying life, having a good time, uplifting ourselves and uplifting others, and being the type of role model that we can be proud of, that can inspire and empower other people, what difference does it make? The
Yeah.
real thing that affects us is, how are we living our life? That's what's important.
Yeah, so true. And I always like to run everything through the filter of, why are we here? To love, to grow, to serve, and have fun along the way. If
Mhm.
if what I'm doing can be put in one of those buckets or a couple of those buckets, not that I'm big on labeling things or compartmentalizing, but if it fits in one of those buckets, then I'm doing okay.
Yep.
Right. So yeah. So what are some of those more expansive energies? Let's talk about the different states of being we talked about, just the emotions staying stuck in suffering. But what are some of
Mhm.
those higher vibrational states that people can aspire to embody?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, non-judgmentalness.
Hmm.
Okay. Connection. Connection as human beings is really, really big. Is one of the reasons why, like, some of the work I've done, the shamanic work, the healing happens in community, in group, with people together. And somehow, when we do our healing work together with other people, it exponentiates, because usually most of our traumas, most of our pains happen because of other people. So when other people are involved in our healing, it really helps. Being in alignment, being true to who and what we are, and
Hmm.
knowing that we are the creator of our lives, and we are the creator of our lives through a million different decisions that we've made through life, through how we've shown up, our attitudes, our energy, and our focus. All of these things have created our life and where we are in this moment. So knowing that we are the creator of our life, a lot of people don't like that, because there's a lot of things in their lives they don't like. And they're like, no, 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 I'm not responsible for all that not good stuff in my life. And it's like, yes, yes, yes. If you're responsible for the good stuff, you're responsible for the not so good stuff also. So taking responsibility for everything, because then you can change it, because then you're empowered. Because if you're not responsible for that stuff in your life, then you're a victim to it. And then as a victim, you don't have the ability, you don't have the power to change things and move forward. I'm a big believer, we create our life. We don't like where we are. We don't like something that's happening. We can change it. Part of the thing to look at is, there are always many, many more choices than we give ourselves credit for. We just may not like some of the consequences to it, but that doesn't mean we don't have a choice. So, remembering that, we are much more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. And that no matter what happens in the external world, no matter what kind of situations present themselves to us, we may not have control over any of that. I mean, let's face it, we don't have control over the world. We can't micromanage the universe, for God, right? We don't have control over that, but we do have 100% control over how we choose to respond to any given situation. And that's where our power lies. And as long as we remember that our power is in our choice, then we can always show up from an empowered place. We can always feel into when we have to make a decision one way or another. This feels expansive, or this feels contractive. This feels good. This doesn't feel good. My body is telling me there's something wrong here, or my body's telling me, yes, I need to lean into this. There's so much power in that, and it's so simple, and we often overlook it. And again, like I said, I'm a nice Jewish boy from the Bronx. I like simple things.
I love that. So, how would you go about finding, kind of along those lines, how would you go about finding peace in what feels like chaos? How is it that you're able to go within and find that peace in a situation that feels overwhelming?
Well, that's where daily practices like meditation, exercise are so important.
Mhm.
um our breath, there's so much magnificence just within our own breath, and that oftentimes if we just stop before we go into something, enter into a situation, to just take a breath, to just breathe for a moment, to connect to ourselves, and maybe even set an intention of what we want. How do we want to feel? What kind of outcome do we want from this situation we're about to enter into? To just take that breath and move into it, like that can help tremendously to calm that hurricane that's whirling around us. May not do it 100%,
Mhm.
but it can do it quite a lot when we do it mindfully. And that's the whole kind of point of just a meditative practice. And meditation, and I hear it all the time, oh, I can't meditate, my mind's too busy, all this stuff. No. And meditation, you do not have to sit still. Anything can be a meditation. I do walking meditations all the time, but it's just about either sitting still and being with yourself, being in movement, but just being with yourself, not
Mhm.
talking, not taking in so much stimulus, but just taking a moment to be with yourself. And if the mind is chattering and you got a million and one thoughts, okay, you have a million and one thoughts. Just be present to it. The amazing thing is, the more present we are to them, if we just be willing to spend that time, no matter how uncomfortable it is, over
Mhm.
time, it starts to calm down. It starts to quiet down. So it's being willing to give ourselves that space so that we can go from this very uncomfortable place into a more quiet, more peaceful, more tranquil state. Now, how long does it take any individual? Well, we're all unique individuals, so everyone is different. Some people, it can happen like that. Other people, it can take weeks of practice. That doesn't mean that the practice isn't helping, and it does not mean that you're not getting benefit along the way. But sometimes we get a little impatient, and we think if I sit down for 15 minutes and my mind isn't completely calm, that I've failed. No,
Mhm.
just by doing it, you've succeeded.
Yeah, I would echo that. And, I know I had a hard time when I first started trying to meditate because I was placing all these judgments on myself. I thought I should be doing it a certain way and I wasn't. And I had all these expectations for how I would feel afterward, et cetera. And then I said, you know what, this is too much. I have to release all of that and just be an observer of my thoughts. And I found that by no longer trying to reject them, then they just sort of magically sort of started to dissipate over time. So
Exactly.
it's an incredibly
Exactly.
relaxing practice. And it's something that I agree. I mean, I used to, in the beginning, I tried to, sit still and make sure everything was completely quiet. And now it really is just being with myself. It could just be a walk, like you said, a moving meditation, a walk out in nature,
Mhm.
many different ways. But I think that, there are as many ways to meditate as there are individuals on the planet. I think there is no one size fits all, no cookie cutter approach. And I think when we embrace that and embody that and understand that, then we free ourselves up, right? I mean, this spiritual journey is always all about getting to a place of freedom. Uh,
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
one of those ways we can do that. So, all right, I know you're doing lots of amazing things in this world, obviously, clearly, personally, also professionally. So, let's shift gears onto kind of onto the business side. And I'd love to hear what you
Sure.
do in the way of helping people elevate their consciousness.
So, my personal brand of the conscious consultant, that's under which I'm a healer, a coach, a mentor. I have people come to me for all kinds of reasons. Everything from they're stuck in their business or they're stuck in their career and they've tried all different things and nothing's helped, to, I have people come to me because they have pains in their body, and the energetic healing helps a lot with that. What I've been focusing most on lately is I also run an internet radio station called TalkRadio.NYC, which I do my own show on Thursdays, 12 noon Eastern time.
Mhm.
And it's just interesting how during this pandemic, uh, tons of people have been coming to me, and that network has really been growing. And the brand for the network is to uplift, empower, educate, and inspire people. So I really love it because I bring on hosts who all have their own shows on all different things, from uh, personal development stuff, business related stuff, and fun kinds of things. And it's sort of like an alternative to mainstream media. It's programming where when people listen, they're like, either they've learned something, they're more educated, they're more inspired, or they're more empowered to do something. So that's a real passion of mine right now. I am working on a couple of things at the moment, because I have 10 and a half years with the online radio and podcasting. I'm creating a monetization class for podcasting. But I'm also really thrilled. I did a private class for an organization I'm a member of with a friend, all about radical non-attachment, and we're going to be doing that class for the general public in May. So if anybody wants to learn about that, they can just go to my website, sign up for my newsletter, or just contact me directly. My website's www.theconsciousconsultant.com. And you can always reach me at sam@theconsciousconsultant.com. And of course, I just came out with my book, became a bestseller, Everyday Awakening. I would love it if people would take a look at it, if it inspires you, if there's stuff in it that really pulls you in, like leave a review on Amazon. We had a wonderful launch in November of 2020, and hit #1 bestseller in 3 different categories on Amazon. And I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from it. So I'm really looking to just get the material and the content out there in the world, because I do feel a lot of the messages in the book are what people need to hear right now.
I would love to hear more about that. Let's dive into that. That's where I was hoping we would go next. What inspired you? Where did you come up with the idea of writing a book?
Well, it's really funny because this wasn't originally supposed to be my first book. I was actually going to do a book based on a bunch of episodes of my program.
Mhm,
However, the I was working with someone to put it together and get the transcripts and then edit them and stuff, and it just never worked out.
mhm,
And so when the beginning of this year, I was like, I got to come out with a book this year. If that's not going to work, well, I have all these blogs that I've been writing for the last 6 years, and people have been telling me how much they enjoy them, inspire them. I have the next door neighbor who she's a PR person. She's saying, you got to publish this stuff. You got to publish this stuff. I was like, okay. So starting in March, actually, when the lockdown happened, I said, I'm not going to live in fear. I'm going to invest in something that brings me joy. And so I hired a professional editor. We looked at, hundreds of blog posts that I did, tightened them up, uh, categorized them, sorted them, pulled out the best of them, and
mhm.
and that's where sort of the book came from. So it's all very bite-sized little chunks because they're short blog posts. So it's kind of the book you randomly open to a page and like there's a message for you that day. And there's 126 of my blogs in here. The one I just randomly opened to said, more is said with our presence than with our words. And
Mm.
it's basically like a one-page essay about presence and the importance of presence. And that's just like one example of what you'll find in the book. And it's not one of those books that people do and you can just like read straight through it, but
Mhm.
it's more like almost like people have called it like an oracle deck in the form of a book, where you just randomly open the page, gives you something to think about, like, oh wow, that's really good. And so it's really just a lot of messages to support people in understanding that we are more powerful than we know, that life does happen for us, and that there's a lot more to be joyful about than we realize in life.
Yeah, and when you were describing your book and describing the layout, that's exactly the word I thought of, oracle. I could envision myself like grabbing the book and just entrusting and allowing the universe to just direct me to the page that I needed that day and help me incorporate the message. So I love that idea. What
Yeah. So
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so it's, because they're all very short essays, it's written for busy people like myself, because I don't have a lot of time. So it's like you need something that's like a quick, 1 5 minute read, boom, you open to a page, you got it.
That is brilliant. That's brilliant. So what I know you do many different things and work with many different types of people, but what aspect of what you do, either personally or professionally, lights you up the most?
Um, wow. I just working with people. I mean, when I'm mentoring or coaching or healing, doing healing work with someone, when
Mhm,
when I see their change in their in just the way they're being and their faces glowing after a session, and I see like they really get it, and they're lit up, it just brings so much joy to me. And it's so funny, like I've had clients come back to me years afterwards, like we worked together for a while, and then they're doing real well, and then they're off on their own, and then they're like, "Oh, I need some more guidance." I just had a client I haven't worked with for about 2 or 3. I've worked with him for like 12, 13 years, but
mhm.
on and off. And I haven't worked with him now for probably 3 years, maybe. And he just came back, say, Sam, I need a few more sessions. I got a lot of stuff going on right now. Would love some guidance. I was like, "Ah," I just love that when that happens.
Yeah, yeah, and I would agree with you. Just being able to witness the transformation happening literally right before your eyes. Just
Yeah.
yesterday, one of my clients came to the session and they were like, "I'm not totally put together for this, and I didn't have time to kind of calm myself before." So they walked in and kind of that contraction mode, feeling
Mm,
stressed and kind of a little frazzled, and then left like feeling amazing. And that was just like I thought, "Ah, this is why I do what I do." So
yeah.
I know I can totally relate to what you're saying. And on the other side of the coin, what is the most challenging aspect of what you do?
Hmm. Sometimes people come to me, especially with the shamanic work that I do, which I totally love doing. It's absolutely my favorite thing. Um, and they've experienced a lot of trauma. They've experienced a lot of pain.
Mhm,
And sometimes you just want to like lift them up. You just want to help them to get out of it, but that's where their own work is. And so it's knowing having good boundaries to know, like, this is their work, not my work, and that if I do it for them, then they're not empowered.
mhm,
So
mm,
it's sort of sometimes witnessing somebody going through a very difficult process and having a hard time with it and not interfering.
mhm,
So that to me can be a very tricky dance that we have to play. Because I do know that ultimately my goal is always, with anybody that I work with, is I want to empower them
right,
to be more self-reliant, to be able to pull themselves up after a while. This is one of the things that I really have a little bit of a hard time with some aspects of the personal development industry, because it tends to create reliance. You always have to keep going back to the guru, to the person who you think is so great and wonderful.
mhm,
I don't want that. I want to work with my clients up until a point where then they feel like they never need me again. And then if they do come back to work with me, they're doing it out of joy, not out of there's something wrong.
mhm.
And so I want to see people fly. I don't want to be the one holding them and carrying them.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things I'd love to bounce off of you and get your perspective is how do you make sense of some of these, these acts of destruction, just the pain in the world, 9/11 attacks, school
Mm,
shootings, things like that. Like that's something I feel like I can use my spiritual principles, my belief system, my understanding and knowledge of the way the universe works, the lessons, etc. That gets me most of the way there, but I do struggle with making sense of events like that. And I'm curious what your spiritual interpretation of those types of things is.
a friend of mine once said, and he's a libertarian, so he's real big on like freedom to own guns and things like that. But he said something I thought was really interesting once. He said, happy people don't kill other people.
Yeah.
And I like, ooh, that is really, really true. So if you want to make sense of things like school shootings and bombings and uh, it's an expression of pain.
Yeah.
And we really don't, as a society, as a global society, we don't really take the time to acknowledge when people are in pain, what
Mhm.
is the cause of the pain, and what needs to be done to alleviate that pain. And a lot of it also comes from this alienation that so many people feel, this isolation, this being cut off. And frankly, it's really a result of, in a ways, the popularity of what I would call the Newtonian worldview, coming from Newtonian physics, where everything is discrete and separate and hard.
Mm.
Whereas in quantum physics, we understand that things aren't so solid and hard, that
Right.
we're actually more wave functions and expressions of energy, and we're actually all interconnected, and we all have an effect on each other. And so when we really, from a spiritual perspective, come to understand how interconnected we are with each other, then why would we hurt somebody else because we're only hurting ourselves? But it's sort of this mindset that's been propagated, particularly in the West, that we're separate and distinct, and
Mhm.
you are you, and I am me, and we're not connected. But the truth is, at least from anybody I know who is spiritually sensitive, who can see energies, who has any kinds of psychic abilities, any person I've met, and I've met a lot of them over the last 10 and a half years. I do my show on a weekly basis, like you do yours, and I've had a lot of these people come on my show. But anybody who you might call it, like, anybody whose third eye is open even a little bit, they
Yeah.
all say the same thing, that there's energy flowing back and forth between every living thing and even inanimate objects, and
Mhm.
that we're all so interconnected. And I feel that that message not just needs to get out there more, but needs to be understood and needs to be integrated into, in a holistic fashion, sort of everything that we do. So then all of a sudden, things like sustainability, recycling, uh, not just having sustainable practices, but having regenerative practices that can create something more than what we started with, then they all start to make sense because of our interconnection to each other, to nature, to the animals, to the plants, to the minerals of the earth. Then we can start treating our home, our planet, that's literally the mother of all life on this planet. People think, oh, this concept of Gaia is so woo woo. No, it's not. It actually is not. And that's the thing, is there's so much pseudoscience, and there's so much sort of illogical thinking that
Mhm.
cuts us off from nature. We feel like we've conquered nature, that we're not a part of nature, so we don't have to pay attention to the seasons, so we don't have to pay attention to what's happening in the environment around us, and all we're doing is hurting ourselves by doing that. I really laugh at these people who argue over climate change, because you know what? It doesn't matter whether there's climate change or not. The things we need to do, that we feel we need to do in order to combat climate change, are things we should be doing anyway, even if there was no climate change. Renewable energy, what's wrong with that? Right? I mean, I laugh. It's like, what is so wrong with wanting to not pollute our environment without,
Mhm.
putting more toxins into our environment? What is so wrong with that? And I think people miss the whole point, that we're part of this planet and this is our environment. And
Right.
if we make it too toxic, not only we're going to kill off the animals and the plants, we're going to kill off ourselves. The
Mhm.
planet will continue to exist. We're the ones who are at stake here. So
Right.
understanding this interconnection, to me, like, it's the raising of consciousness. And when we raise consciousness, we just naturally see the web of life, like this symbol behind me, this ancient symbol of the flower of life, is all about the interconnected web of life.
Mhm. Such a beautiful and deep answer. What do you think it's going to take to get to a place of permanent world peace?
It's really about doing our own work.
Yeah.
It's not about worrying about what other people are doing, but doing our own personal inner work. They say, like, if you see violence in your world, there's violence inside of you. If you see division in the world, there's division inside of you. And indeed, if again, my belief system, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, true or not true, it's just purely my belief system. If we are energetic beings of light, we're receiving and transmitting energy constantly, and light photons travel around the world 7 times in a second. That just by doing our own work, just by elevating our own consciousness, we're sending out that message around the globe. And so the more people who raise and elevate their consciousness, the more it will affect other people in the world. And I've heard different statistics and different people say different things. Um, One of the organizations I'm involved with, the Evolutionary Business Council, our goal is to raise the consciousness of 1.2 billion people on the planet, because that would be 15% of the world population, which is what some people have estimated to be the tipping point of consciousness.
Oh, okay.
So we don't have to reach everybody. We don't even have to reach 50%, just 15%.
Oh,
But it requires us to do our own work, and the more and the deeper we do our own work, the more we affect the people around us. And who knows, maybe just that one person who we do an act of kindness for, that prevents them from committing suicide. I've heard all these kinds of stories that,
yeah.
just doing an act of kindness prevents them from doing something horrible, and then they turn their life around, and then who knows how many hundreds or thousands or millions of people they could affect positively in their life. We really just don't know. But all we're responsible for is our own work. And if we just take that responsibility with sacredness and
Yeah.
with honor, and we come from that place, that then we don't have to worry. I mean, not saying that everything's going to change overnight, of course not. That's not the way nature works. But if we all do our part, if everybody who listens to this broadcast really makes a commitment to themselves to do their own deep inner personal transformational spiritual work, and raises their consciousness over their lifetime, how many hundreds of thousands of millions of people will that affect over the course of our lifetimes? The smallest drop in the ocean can create huge waves. So let's
Yeah.
not worry about other people. Let's remember our own responsibility to ourselves.
Such a beautiful and powerful answer. So, what are some simple everyday ways that we can all take part in healing ourselves and therefore healing the world?
So the first thing is honoring ourselves. And how do we really honor ourselves? And that's practicing self-care. It's so funny. Self-care became sort of part of my language probably about 7, 8 years ago.
Mhm.
And back then, I don't remember people talking about it too much. But today, I hear so many people talking about self-care. And why is self-care so important? Because self-care is the physical act of showing yourself that you do love yourself.
Mhm.
So every time you do something to take better care of yourself, get body work done, exercise, eat better, connect with people, do something that lights you up, that's practicing self care. You're saying unconsciously to your unconscious, to your nervous system, to your body, to your spirit, I love you. I care about you. And when we do that, then the other things sort of naturally flow from that.
Beautiful.
And life always supports us. When we take better care of ourselves, life will always support us.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've experienced that on my own journey. There was a time where I didn't prioritize self-care. I totally remember the time when self-care wasn't, a word that's commonly being used the way that it is now, but it really does make a difference. I mean, as I've heightened my self-awareness, I actually do feel better. I feel like my energy is higher, my vibration is higher when I do take time to invest in myself. And I always say, the best investment we make, is the investment we make in ourselves. And
Always.
interestingly, I was just listening to an interview with Warren Buffett last week, and
Mm.
he said those exact words, and I laughed. I said he probably heard it from me. I'm just kidding. But it is so true. It is absolutely so true. And I agree that that's where ultimately, we'll achieve world peace is when we achieve that inner peace, when we make that investment in ourselves and realize that everything in our world stems from the relationship that we have with ourselves.
Yeah. We talk a lot about the inner world and the outer world. The truth is there is no inner world and outer world. It's all one world.
Yeah. Yeah. So powerful. Well, Sam, thank you so much for being here and for this brilliant, absolutely brilliant interview. I've enjoyed
Thank you so much,
everything.
Pamela. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. And again, I know you said it earlier in the podcast, but would you tell people again where they can get a hold of you directly if they'd like to get in touch with you?
Yes, you can get a hold of me through my website, theconsciousconsultant.com. And if you'd like to get a copy of the book, you can go to everydayawakeningbook.com. And if you'd like to hear my show, actually, my show this week was all about consciously investing in yourself. You can find that on TalkRadio.NYC. Just look for the Conscious Consultant Hour.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And
Pamela, thank you so much. I really do appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share my messages with your audience. I do hope that what I say resonated with yourself and with your audience. And if there's anything I can do to support in the process, please let me know.
thank you. Thank you again for sharing this time and all of your infinite knowledge and wisdom. Thank you. And to all of our viewers and listeners, thank you. As you well know by now, I believe that time is a choice. And I'm grateful that you have carved time out of your day to be here and listen to all of the knowledge and wisdom that Sam has bestowed on us today. So thank you again, everyone, and have an amazing day.